What's up, Nevada Patriots? I have an exciting show for you today. With me in studio, a man I look up to, someone who I admire, a freedom lover, liberty lover, and a true constitutionalist. Stay tuned for the spokesperson of Pahrump Film Festival, KPFF 97.7 FM. Stay tuned.
Attention, Southern Nevadans. Turn up that dial for some real talk about the issues that matter to us. From some of our valley's local leaders, business owners, and even the occasional elected official. Airing now on incredibly intelligent local radio stations and streaming worldwide at the NevadaPatriot.com. Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome back to the Nevada Patriot Podcast. I'm your usual happy host, Matt Sadler, and I am elated for my guest host on today's program. Even though I've only known him for not even a year and a half, I feel like he's family, and my wife and kids would agree. This man has been a leading advocate for the Constitution here in my great native state of Nevada, and I tell you what, Nevada's lucky to have him. Nye County's lucky to have him. Better yet, our town of Pahrump is fortunate to have him. Please welcome the spokesperson for Pahrump Film Festival, KPFF 97.7 FM, Anthony Greco. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thanks, Matt. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you, brother.
That was a nice introduction, but most people running stuff don't think what you just said.
Hey. I wrote that from the heart, Anthony.
Okay, good.
Okay. So it didn't take me too long to find common ground with you when I met you. Doing some volunteer work at the Nye Communities Coalition. So you're a fellow lover of freedom like me. You love and revere the U.S. Constitution, not to mention fellow coffee lover and fan of just saying what's on your mind. So I've always respected that about you, Anthony. And you're one of the few people who effectively argue against corruption better than me, and you love to tell it how you see it. What's on your mind today as we're getting into the groove of the year 2023?
Well, I always look towards the future, but I'm hoping that I'm not correct, that it's not going to be a good future, because it would be horrible to live the life that I think we're going to end up with.
Right.
So I just keep moving forward and try to do things for the community and for people. Everybody deserves a second chance, no matter what. And just hope for the best. Be prepared for the worst, hope for the best.
Right. Yeah, and I know when we can get bogged down in our day-to-day lives, I think a lot of us get fixated on, national politics, the president, all these, global issues, which are important. But sometimes when we're just going about our business, living day-to-day, we're kind of living here locally. I mean, the stuff that happens in our community locally where we actually have the ability to make a difference. I think you kind of agree with me that that's where we need to focus more of our energy. Because things aren't always perfect here locally, but the good part is we have a chance to make it better.
When you work on fixing your backyard, which are town, then county, and then state, the state, if you got the right people in place, can protect you from the federal government.
Right.
So that's why you have to work on your town. And if we do it and people see that we did a good job, then it gives them hope to fix their backyard.
Yeah.
And then if everybody's backyard is fixed, which is their town and their county, everything will get better. You don't build the Empire State Building on a foundation for a modular home.
Right.
Okay, so you have to build a strong foundation, which is your community, and that's how you grow in it. And when good things happen locally, it happens in other local places, and people, it's hard to fight Goliath.
Yeah.
It's easy to fight his kid brother.
That's true. Yeah, so you've been out here in Nye County quite a bit longer than I have, since we relocated out here about 4 years ago.
Right.
How do you see things going on? The unofficial or official, however you want to word it, like the development plan or the scheme of our community or where it's heading. and the job that the commissioners are doing, or the planning commission. Are you seeing that to be issue? Because you always run into people. We love our rural lifestyle. That's one of the reasons I moved out here. Right. But also on the other side of that coin is, I'm a big believer in freedom, mobility. People can migrate. My folks did, obviously, from New Mexico, from Illinois, to come out for a better life. So I never want to really restrict people. I don't want to just come to the party and then close the door behind me and say, oh, no one can come back to my perfect little town now. Development, move out. So how do you think the balance is in our community with kind of balancing the growth and some of the issues that come with that versus kind of preserving the lifestyle that most of us want to keep out here?
Well, when I came out here in the beginning of '98 to check the place out, it reminded me of Staten Island when I was a kid. Unfortunately, greedy politicians ruined Staten Island because they did things that weren't good for the community. They did things that was good for their pocket.
Yeah.
So when I came here in '98, I looked at it and I says, this is a great little town. If they do this right, it could be really good for a very long time. And what we have is, if you look at it, we don't have a town center. Like, we don't have Main Street, USA. 160 is not Main Street, it's a highway.
Yeah.
But if you had like a loop off of 160 would be like your Main Street, where you could have these, everybody's looking about restaurants and boutiques and stuff like that. If you had a place that you can go, like in Staten Island, there's a place called Newdorp Lane. It's in Newdorp, Staten Island. And there's all restaurants and shops and diners. And it's just like a family-oriented. You park your car, you can walk up and down the street. We don't have that.
Right.
Okay, the focus on this town is Walmart.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that just don't make it.
In pre-COVID, that was probably like the one place you could go hang out with your kids, right? Like, I'm late at night, I can't sleep. Let's go hang out, walk the aisles at Walmart for recreation.
And that's what they do in little towns in Florida. It's everybody hangs out on a Friday night in the parking lot of Walmart and drink beer.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of good can happen.
You want something where it's kid-friendly and the parents can enjoy themselves too. Yeah. We don't have that.
I kind of agree with you there. Maybe that's something that the commissioners and the people planning things in our community need to look a little bit deeper into. Because I get, you go onto these social media sites and, one of the news outlets will announce, Arby's is being built or some other, and you get all the people just complaining and railing and wanting, we need a Target, we need a Ross, we need an Applebee's, we need, whatever it might be. But it's almost one of those things where you got to be careful what you wish for. And if you want this place to become Las Vegas Junior and have that trajectory, you got to ask yourself, why did you move out here in the first place? If that's what you really want, not to say that people can't do what they want, but if that's why you want to come out here and then complain about it, well, maybe you made the bad choice.
If you keep, definitely. If you came, like my father used to say when he was alive, there's no street lights and sidewalks. I says, we live in a rural community. We don't want that.
Yeah.
I want to be able to sit on my front porch, smoke a cigar with a cup of coffee, and watch all the stars.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Yeah. That's why I came here. I laughed. I came here 25 years ago, and there was a guy that lived here, and he had moved from Henderson to here because he said Henderson was getting too big. He says, and this 25 years ago, he's telling me Pahrump is going the same way. I started to laugh because coming from New York, this didn't look like a city at all, but I didn't want that. When I was a kid, my parents bought property up in the Pocono Mountains, Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, and I loved it. We had a rural lifestyle, and we went there every weekend, and we stood there for a month in the summertime to get away from the city.
Yeah.
Well, this reminded me of that, and I wanted it. It can grow, but it has to grow the right way.
Right.
If you want tourism, a lot of people go to Death Valley and everything, they come through here, you need a Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay, the buses stop at Starbucks in Albertsons. You want Main Street, USA. That's what all these European people want. They want to see the Old West.
Yeah.
They even took that sign down. Pahrump, the new Old West. They got rid of the sign.
Yeah.
They don't want that new Old West thing. They should have it.
Right.
European people come here, they spend a lot of money, and they come here to use the bathroom and drink coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah.
That's not what Pahrump should be. It should have a Wild West town center.
Yeah, because you're right. Because I remember traveling through Lincoln County and seeing a couple towns, whether it's Caliente or Pioche, and when you see their little, I guess you call it, and I think it might even be called Main Street in Pioche. It's like almost like you're like kind of trapped in a different era, a different time, and you can kind of disconnect a little bit. And I think that would be more of us playing with our strengths out here in Pahrump versus just trying to have a blueprint of what Las Vegas would have been in the 50s or 60s. Like, why we shouldn't really start from that. We got to play to our strengths out here. And plus, got other considerations. The water is a bigger issue than it's ever been in the history of my life in Southern Nevada. So we have to balance that being stewards of the environment and just making smart choices. And I don't think, and I'm not going to rag on politicians and people because, until we're in their shoes, we don't always know. But it just seems like there could be more that they do to kind of push us in that direction.
Well, Harley Culkin wanted to do something where the fairgrounds is, but they wanted a theme park and everything. I'm telling you, when Andy Alberti was alive, we were trying to get property in Johnny. And we wanted to build an Old West town with a casino, a hotel, but all Old West stuff. They could come there and go horseback riding. It would be an Old West community, and we were trying to do that. And I incorporated, called the City of Johnny. And we were going to turn around and take Johnny over and buy all the properties that people couldn't build on because they were too small, put them all together, and have this place called the City of Johnny. And the reason why we wanted to incorporate, which I don't like incorporating Pahrump, but we wouldn't have, if we were an incorporated city, we wouldn't have to deal with the county. We could do our own stuff. And we were going to do solar on the buildings where you couldn't see because it would look like an Old West town. Yeah. And people could come there, and we were talking about doing a TV show again, like Bonanza and stuff like that, and have people who come to the community and pay to stay there be parts in that. So you could teach people acting and everything and keep it an Old West community.
Yeah.
And then, everybody was fighting it, and Andy got sick and passed away, and that didn't happen.
Right. But, I mean, that's important. We need to have that among our citizenry, among our leaders. Got to have, like, an ability to be creative, thinking outside of the box, and not always just having some vision ahead, right? So oftentimes in our life, as elected officials or public officials, or even in day-to-day lives for normal people like me and you, we can fall into the trap of just kind of living for that day, living for that hour, and not thinking ahead. And then all of a sudden, maybe this mindlessness that we can fall into, we fast forward a couple years, and then we see where we've drifted to. And I'm just afraid that sometimes we're going to drift to an area where we can't reset, and we can't go back on it, and we can't reclaim what could have been. But honestly, that is a fantastic idea. And I'm just wondering the role of our government on how they can encourage that type of thinking, that type of innovation. Because when I was listening to some commissioners, and when we're dealing with some of the funding that we can get from the federal government, they're talking about doing these projects, these works, or whether it's parks or recreational stuff, and all I see, the bean counter in me is saying, well, this is going to cost the taxpayers money over time. How do we get these same types of services by maybe engaging the private sector? Like, fix our infrastructure, make sure our roads are nice. I mean, we waited so long for Pahrump Valley Boulevard, and you know it better than most people. And then the finished product is still not really what
it's horrible.
You were promised, right?
Yeah.
So if you kind of can set what the government's role to fix infrastructure different ways, with our money, like if you get a Christmas present from your grandma, it's like $20. I was a kid that would put it in my bank or something, or save it, and not go to the candy store and then and then squander it.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes if we take this government assistance from the feds, maybe instead of worrying about like a new equestrian park or whatever new infrastructure thing, what if they just took that money and said, we're going to just revamp all the roads to encourage innovation kind of like that to come to the valley and set something up out here that can be of use, and let the private sector do it. Because when the government steps in, half the time they're going to do a terrible job.
Well, the problem is there's too many rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And you we want to do this, but we can't do it because of this rule or that regulation or this. That's why if you can get enough of, that's why we're talking about Johnny.
Yeah.
It was outside the RPC, Regional Planning Commission, because the Regional Planning Commission is only for Pahrump.
Yeah.
Tonopah don't have it, Amargosa don't have it, and I didn't want to do anything in Amargosa because it's too far away. So Johnny was perfect.
Just right outside.
You had the old mine up there. Actually, Andy started the Nevada Gold Seekers, and they still exist. I think they just hooked up with the Rockhounds. But they have a piece of property where they could do mining right in Johnny, and whatever they collect at, I forgot how they do it. I think it's you get a piece of land from BLM, and then if you do something with it over a period of time, it becomes your land.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I think you can get like 320 acres or 640 acres, and you could do things like that. But everybody talks against it, and in my situation, because of I'm fighting government corruption all the time, they're going to badmouth me all the time. So whatever I come up with, they're going to say, this guy's a scammer. And a lot of people believe it, and that's fine. You're allowed to believe what you want. I don't believe in, like, when the Pahrump Valley Times was attacking me, saying I was a convicted murderer and arsonist. That's malice.
Yeah, that is.
Okay? I don't like rumors. Like, I used to have a Facebook page called Pahrump Freedom. And I used to tell people, I want information, but don't do rumors, because the person, like, I'm not a friend of Brian Kunze. I don't like him. Okay? But I would not bash him where it would hurt his family.
Right.
Okay? Because he's a father and a husband and everything. And his family may be great people. Okay? And they don't know what he does on his job. And he's probably good to his family.
Right.
Okay, so there's no reason to hurt him in a way that's not true. So rumors are horrible. But if you have facts, bring them out.
Yeah. That's why I would say you don't bash character, you don't attack character. Anyway, you can attack actions, you can attack statements, and I think that's all fair game. And I did another podcast that's not going to make the radio where I was talking about thin-skinned elected officials, and I'm not singling him out. I'm just saying in a broad sense.
Right.
Sometimes these officials,
right,
they're saying everybody says one thing during the campaign, right? You know, so if you go to them with concerns, they're going to fix everything, and they're going to do the hand waving at you and kissing babies and saying, "Oh, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to join the fight with you." Lo and behold, they get elected, and all of a sudden, "Oh, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do. There's all this red tape. Well, if maybe we elect more Republicans in the Senate and they change the laws, and maybe I can do my job." And I'm thinking, well, this wasn't really what you campaigned on. If your campaign is just, "Hey, elect me, and then when all these things get fixed, I can do an effective job," I think that's thin-skinned. And I think if you're a public official, you should be able to ask your public officials things in even a public setting. And if they feel uncomfortable with it, you got to ask yourself, well, why are they uncomfortable with it?
Right.
Like if you ask me anything, if you ask me how many people did I wield an axe and drive into their skull last week, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable about it. I'd be like, "You're crazy. You're out of your mind. I would never do something like that. What a dumb question." But you ask certain politicians stuff that they swear that they have no control over, or they don't do, or that's not them. They get offended that you say it in a way that makes them be looked at in a bad light, instead of just get your thick skin, put your big boy or big girl pants on, answer the questions, and if you don't know something, tell them you don't know. If you can't help with something, tell them you can't help. But don't be offended that we're going to you as because they work for us, right?
Yeah.
I know. That's one thing I would say from Leo Blundo. I mean, he drives that point home, right? The government works for us, so we have a right to petition them, to question them, but not necessarily to bash their character, hurt their families. I don't ever want to do that to anyone.
Yeah, no.
But you're fair game. This is what you signed up for when you're there. So sometimes we got to rattle the cage a little bit and get them to do their job.
Yeah. Well, I had I had a situation with Robert Lane, the judge, and how could I put this without using foul language? He actually said in the courtroom, on the record, I don't understand why he brought up a murder charge. That's where the newspaper got this whole convicted murderer thing. And in the courtroom, Lane was trying to say that he thought I was in the witness protection program.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So I left. I left. I turned around and told him that if I was in the witness protection program, my name would be Schwartz, not Greco.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to say. And then he started in a little bit more and pushing that whole situation. And when I sued the Pahrump Valley Times for saying that I was a convicted murderer and arsonist, and Matt Ward was the editor at the time, and when the paper was bought out, he had to go or they wouldn't buy it because of what he said about me. But meanwhile, Lane turned around and said that because I was a figure on the radio and I ran for town board, I'm open game for anything. Yeah. So I said to him in the courtroom, so if I go around saying that Judge Robert Lane is a child molester, even though I think it's only my opinion, is that correct? He grabbed his paperwork and ran out of the courtroom.
Yeah. I don't think there's that, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm not a judge or anything, but it seems like libel can be libel and slander can be slander, and if it's libelous or slanderous, even if you are somewhat of a public figure, I would think that...
Well, if you're doing it with malice, I mean, I was never convicted of being a murderer.
Yeah,
how could you turn around and say I'm a convicted murderer?
If it's printed, I mean, I don't know, to me that's a definition of libel. Right. That's what it is, right?
And I actually...
Materially wrong and it's malicious.
Yeah, but he wanted to beat me up because I went after him for something he did wrong. And there was 3 people involved, and I'm not going to say their names, but actually it was a large sum of money, and it's RICO. There was 3 people involved with something that had to do with money. That's RICO. Those 3 people, one of them was Robert Lane, they could lose everything they have from the federal government on a RICO charge.
Yeah, that's serious stuff.
It's very serious stuff. And I went after him another time because every time you went to court with him, he would say he's LDS. I'm LDS. I'm LDS. First of all, he's not allowed to do that in court. I made a motion for him to stop doing it. He hates me even more. But he stopped doing it for 5 years, and now he's starting to do it again. Is that intimidation? That if you're not LDS, I'm going to go after you? And I brought up that I was Roman Catholic, and I don't think I'm going to get a fair shake in front of him because he's LDS. So when I made the motion, he blew a gasket, and he said, my whole family is a Roman Catholic. I was brought up Roman Catholic. Well, so I'm saying to myself, well, you became LDS because that's where the power is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people who are Mormons are bad people, but if you convert to that for power, you're a bad person.
Yeah.
If you're brought up that way, there's nothing wrong with them. They're hardworking people.
Yeah.
And they're honest.
And they plan, collectively making plans, and the system of tithing and the different support structure they have is actually pretty commendable on a lot of grounds,
Definitely.
Yeah.
I have no problem with any religion. I was brought up Roman Catholic. I don't practice being a Catholic anymore because I'm more spiritual now. I became friends with Native Americans. I became more spiritual. I believe in what I was taught because I would never walk away from it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe in my religion, but I don't practice it.
Gotcha.
Okay, I know there's a higher power. I don't know if it's exactly the way the church told me it is. I know there's a higher power. I know there's more to it than what we could see. So
yeah, anytime you're talking about religious systems, are run by man and mankind, and we're fallible. We're not perfect people. Mm-hmm. So these institutions are not going to be are going to be far from perfect. So that is a dynamic that we all have to wrestle with, right? Like what systems are true? Because I like you, we have to know that there is objective truth out there, that things are good for a reason, not because it's good for me or it's good for you. Mm-hmm. Like, because something that's good for me, if I just looked at what's right that way, mm-hmm. What I like could infringe on your rights, and we call ourselves constitutionalists. And for the listeners out there, and I know you were part of the Republican Party, I am an active Republican. We see common ground on a lot of things, but I know you identify yourself more as a constitutionalist. You want to kind of engage with the listeners a little bit and kind of tell you what things you think about that might stand out and what that really means to be a constitutionalist.
As a constitutionalist, I believe in small government.
Yes.
Okay, we the people are really in control. We just gave it away.
True.
Okay, if we stick together, we could go back to a constitutional republic and we wouldn't have all these rules and regulations. I believe in the Constitution, the Bible, and a couple of traffic laws, and leave me alone.
That's a good point.
Okay?
Yeah.
A business license does not make you a better business person.
Right.
You know, these people who are going to do bad things will get a business license, they'll pay all the fees, they'll get all the insurance, and they're protected. The guy who doesn't have it, like, there's a Facebook page here, support business, licensed businesses.
Right.
Why? Does that make you any better? It doesn't.
Yeah.
If you're a scammer, you're going to be a scammer with a license or without a license.
Right.
If you're a good business person, you're going to do the right thing for the community. On 97.7, I don't promote anybody or take money from anybody to sponsor the station if they're not a good business person.
True.
And I don't care if they have a license or not. But if I hear something bad about them, I will go to them.
Right.
And tell them, is this true? And I will not even take their money.
Yeah.
Okay, because money isn't everything. Okay, so I will not take their money if they're not good to the community. If you're ripping people off, especially people who have businesses where they deal with old people and they don't know any better and they take advantage of them, I don't like that.
Yeah.
A widower, a female who doesn't have a husband or a spouse in any way, and I don't want her to be taken advantage of.
Right.
You don't take advantage of old people or children.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to go after somebody like us, then we could just split your head open if we had to.
Hopefully
Okay, you're only going to rob me once. That's it. And, you know, I'm known to my friends in New York as no fluff.
Yeah.
You ask me a question, I'm going to give you my opinion.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't ask.
Right. No, and it's refreshing, and it's because, like you said, having all these different regulations that you abide by. I mean, I think the constitutional framers would look at our government now. Like, I mean, our lawmakers are in session right now, for instance. They're going through, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of bill proposals. Mm-hmm. So, in theory, you think that our system where we only make laws like 4 months out of every 2 years is good, better than California. They're doing it all day long, like 24-hour lawmaking out there in California. Mm-hmm. But it seems like we make this mad dash toward regulation, red tape, fees. All this stuff is on the table like every 2 years, and it's like a blitzkrieg. And then when the dust settles, we look at the laws that get passed, and we're like, oh my gosh, where did this dopey law come from? And it just seems like if you're a real constitutionalist, and I consider myself a constitutional conservative who happens to be in the Republican Party, like I have the value systems of a social conservative and a fiscal conservative. So, but my feeling is that on the social conservative side, I believe that certain things are good. They're morally right things to do, or structures of the family, the household. But I don't believe the government does a good job, and I don't want them to step into that realm to enforce things. So I think that's where I feel like I have a lot of common ground with you and even some libertarians out there where I kind of see eye to eye on things. There's pro-life libertarians, for instance. You know, I'm friends with a high-profile one on Facebook, so we have a lot of common ground because I'm pro-life as well. And it just seems that we put ourselves in these little tribes, and either you love the Constitution or you don't. There was a time when many Democrats could say that they love the Constitution. I don't know if that time is still here, because so much of what's in their platform, if you read it carefully, very anti-constitutional. So, but the same can be said about Republicans, because me and you talk about it all the time. We live in Pahrump. We live in Nye County. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a Republican. Just like every primary season before Trump, remember? Mm-hmm. Reagan. I'm a Reagan Republican. And now it's like Donald Trump. Everybody's like defining themselves, and it's hard to get the authentic people. It's hard to pick them out of the schlubs. It's hard, you know, and that's why we're in a little bit of a pickle, you know. And I think a lot of times the way the system is, you know, candidates to become viable at these local levels have to prove that they have a lot of money, but then how do they get their money? oftentimes have to sell themselves
exactly
out. So, but at the local level, and I can tell you from experience that if you look at my campaign accounts, we didn't spend a lot of money to campaign and run a really viable campaign. And I hope that can give encouragement to people out there who might want to get off the couch and get into the fight, so to speak, that are good people that revere the Constitution, morally good people, to run for elections. I hope they consider it, because if they don't and I'm talking school board, county commission, these offices that aren't super high profile, but they really do affect our day-to-day living more than whoever the Speaker of the House is.
School board is a very important position.
Yeah.
Okay, most people don't go for it because it's not like an exciting job.
Sure, and it's not going to retire you early in life, with the money.
It's very important position, because what we are going down the drain because of the way children are being taught.
Yes.
They're being programmed. When I was a kid in 68, my brother graduated high school in 68, and that time they were going after the college kids. Most of your professors had a communist look to them, as far as their their politics. And I had a cousin who turned around, was at the Capitol throwing rocks at the Capitol in the 60s, 1969. Okay, so now they don't want to wait that 17, 18 years to get their brain. They want to start them in grammar school, so they don't have to teach out that 18 years that they may have learned from a conservative parent or relative.
Right, because you're if you have good parents that are teaching you morals, and from our talks, it seems like you came from a really good family. Your parents treated you, taught you well, always gave you what you needed, gave you the truth. And imagine kids that don't have that at all now, that are in the system. And like you said, if they're getting them in first grade with whether it's a sex ed videos or critical race theory principles, and I realize that this is a common argument. Well, they don't teach CRT to 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. That's a college level course. Well, that's that's just playing games with the semantics. If you're teaching the principles that involve, defining people, exactly what we conquered. I was a product of the 80s school system, where we were very integrated in our school district in Las Vegas, and I'm going to tell you, racial issues weren't that big of a problem when I was a kid. It seems like we had a lot of victory from a lot of the fights that we conquered, and got to a certain point where we conquered a lot of the institutional racism and things like that. And now it just seems like we're back in it again, and we're sending our kids to these schools. And I was surprised even in Nye County, where you think this is a refuge of good moral thinking and teaching. And I think maybe it had been corrupted by people on that school board. In addition to, we're just giving too much power, I think, to the teachers and parents. Until COVID, oftentimes were not aware of exactly what was going on. But I think maybe some bells have gone off since COVID. One of the few good things that might have happened, to where now we're a little bit more tuned in. And I know we elected a pretty good board member. Chelsea Fisher, I think, is doing a pretty good job so far up there. And if we could just change the dynamics in some of these local elections, it can really do a good job, because these are the kids that are going to be, manning this town and organizing and hopefully staying here and working and starting businesses and being the next generation of elected officials. And they need to be solid, and I don't want to fail them now.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, there's a couple of things that hurt the country. Number one was breaking up the family unit.
Yeah.
Divorce is an everyday occurrence, and years ago they didn't think about it as much. Drugs.
Gosh,
because they got the parents and they got the kids. And when you break up the family and you break up religion, you start to decline.
Certainly seems that
And
way.
one of the things is, when you have these homes that are broken up, and I've seen it myself with people that I know, and when there's a single parent household, and then the mother is not discreet enough with her personal life as an adult, and a young girl sees her mother with 4 or 5 guys per year, she's going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a generational
It's going to be the
handoff.
same thing.
Yep.
And young girls should realize that if you have morals and you want to have a good life, you have to think about who your partner's going to be.
Yeah.
And not keep changing them. Because then you get a bad reputation. Nobody's going to show you respect.
Right.
So if a mom is doing this in front of a 12 and 13-year-old daughter, the daughter's going to think it's okay.
Yeah.
Because kids do not do what you tell them. They do what they see.
Yeah.
And now you have a whole breakdown of the family unit and breaks society apart. And that's where we're running into a problem. I mean, the things that I do in my life, if they're personal, I make sure nobody knows about it. I mean, I don't do anything that's horrendous that I'm going to go to hell for, but I enjoy having a good time.
Yeah.
But if I had kids in my house, they wouldn't see it.
Right.
It's that simple. It's a breakdown of society, and you don't realize it. The mom might not realize it.
Yeah.
Because
we're programmed by culture, and the culture itself, and like the media and entertainment, their value. I mean, imagine what gets across on cable TV now would have been rated R, NC. What do they call it? NC-17 when we were younger.
God.
You know what I mean?
I can't believe it.
You're swimming in this, and all of a sudden your kid could be watching AMC at like 8:00 at night and hearing horrible language or seeing horrible scenes on TV. Adult situations and things like that. But it's become so normal now that maybe it's like a fish not knowing it's wet, right? It's just, that's the way life is. And then when you compound that, like you said, with a single parent home, drug use compounds it even more. These kids have like almost no shot that their only refuge might be public school, and then they go to public school, and then now they're taught that they got white privilege, or talking to a minority child that they don't have the same opportunities as their Caucasian classmate because of their skin. Either way you see that, like, it's a double-edged, racially charged, horrible thing that these kids can be shown in school, and it's setting them up for further disaster because their one refuge that they might have is school, and then the school's corrupting them more. It's like getting out of an abusive situation and moving into a different foster house or foster home, and then your foster parent beats you. You know what I mean? And that happens too. But it just seems like our society and our culture, and I'm not saying that believing Judeo-Christian values are important, right? They're super important, and the concerted effort to push that completely away was just, that's one domino, and then it leads to another domino, and before you know it, there's going to be lawlessness and despair.
In communism, they don't allow you to have religion.
That's the first thing to go.
Right.
When they're,
okay? Because the government is the know-all, and you're supposed to do everything they tell you to do. And, the other day, I usually watch news, but I was flipping through the channels because one of the channels for the news I watch wasn't working. And I'm looking at this program, I'd never seen it before, and I'm sitting there and I'm doing some paperwork, and I'm looking and I'm saying, everybody on this program's gay. Now, I don't have a problem with people that are gay. I don't have a problem with anything as long as you're not hurting an old person or a young kid.
Sure.
If it's consensual, you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
As long as nobody's getting hurt, you do what you want. But I'm saying, why does this program have to have everybody's gay? They're going to a psychiatrist to talk about their romance is no good. Yeah. So I remember when I was younger and women would be with other women and they would talk, they would always go after somebody who's not happy in their marriage. That was one of the things they used to do. It's horrible to say that, but they used to do it, and I know people it happened to.
Yeah,
and they try to use your unhappiness to gain from you.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
You use it. That's like robbing an old lady for a purse.
Yeah.
Because you know she's not going to beat you up.
Right.
Okay? I remember one lady in Harlem, they were trying to steal her purse, and she had this 4-inch hat pin, and she's stabbing them with the hat pin, and they ran away.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's an old lady that wasn't going to put up with any of that stuff because she was a fighter and she lived in a bad neighborhood. But how I'm going around in a circle here because just different things pop into my head. Family values are very important. family values make you vote more conservative too, because you're trying to protect your family.
Right.
Okay, so everything ties in. Okay, everything. Everything is a circle, but circles collide.
Yeah.
Okay, so
overlaps.
Every little thing that's broken down affects every other big thing. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize it. That's what the problem is. You really have to sit in a dark room one time and just sit there with no noise and think inside your head, what do you want? How do you get it without abusing anybody else?
Right.
And if you start thinking with value, your life will become better.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and our officials are turning it, well, like you were talking about, when we're pushing faith and religion out of the culture. That's why they have no problem with substituting as part of the religion, like the clean energy agenda. They're fine with you worshiping something like that they can control, right, with their regulations and to seek power, to keep their people in office and all that. They don't mind us worshiping the earth or thinking we have this great capacity to, if the U.S. cuts down by emissions, but what's India and China going to do? They pollute like exponentially more than us. They're sure as heck not going to do this good stewardship stuff of the environment. But it's this virtue signaling, and it's also this equity agenda, right? So that we go back to like what you just said, that as long as it doesn't affect someone else, like for people to have their own liberties. But what this whole equity agenda does, like when it affects, when kids apply for college, right, or they're trying to go to Harvard, for instance. And I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a while ago, Asian Americans had to test like off the charts in order to get in, higher than a Caucasian student, and the Caucasian student had to test higher than other minority students. And that, to me, that's just not fair. Same thing, and I'm hearing it's happening in the airline industry. Now, do you want your pilot to be like the best pilot in that plane when he's carrying you and 250 people thousands of feet above the earth? Do you really want our lives to be hinged on, well, we got to have 64% of these types of people in these jobs? I just want the best, and I think a meritocracy is what we're missing out on, and that's what made America so awesome. There's always been corruption, the big families and the monopolies maybe early on, but there was always an opportunity that if you're born on like the bottom rung or the second to lowest rung, you could have so much more upward mobility. And now when you're hearing people, and I see it all the time, when people have too much success, they think that this pie is limited, and if this guy's piece of the pie is big, we got to knock him down. Or if, white folks are too successful in this industry, we need to punish them so that it can open up a bigger piece of pie for some other groups of people. And to me, that's immoral.
Well, that started with Clinton. And what they did was, I think African Americans are 13% of the population.
Yeah, a number similar to that.
Clinton,
for sure.
They had to have 50% of the jobs. How does that make any sense? How about stop looking at skin color and where you came from, and just look at look at Martin Luther King.
I was just going to mention that.
Okay,
right?
He turned around and says, by the way you act and your education is what should get you ahead, not because, I don't want a pilot because of affirmative action. He's got to have the job, or she has to have the job. You're dividing us.
Yeah.
If you're a citizen, we're all Americans. We're all supposed to help each other. That's why I have a problem with illegal aliens. Okay, I have a problem with that. Okay, all my family, listen, I'm the firstborn generation in this country, so I don't hate immigrants. My whole family's immigrants.
Yeah, you wouldn't be here without it.
Yep. And the point of that is they came here, my grandfather, my mother's father, they came here, they got a foothold, had a business, because he couldn't get a job because he didn't speak English well.
Right.
Okay, and now Mexicans and Hispanic people, which there's really no Hispanic people, you're Spanish, you're Puerto Rican, you're Mexican, like that. They're doing the same thing. They're smart. They're going into business. People, you don't want to give me a job? I'll do it myself.
Right.
Okay, so then my grandfather would bring another guy in from Italy, a relative, get them a foothold. They would be on their own. They would bring their family in. He'd bring somebody else. But you have to, legally, you're responsible for somebody you bring in here for 10 years.
Yeah, it's like what they call it, almost like a sponsorship program where you're kind of vouching.
Exactly, and that should be like that.
Right.
Okay? People hate Trump because they think he was anti-Mexican. Trump's not anti-anything. He's against people that don't believe in the Constitution of the United States of America as a whole.
Right.
That's why when he was calling himself, he's a national, not a globalist, they thought that was a horrible thing.
Right.
It's not a horrible thing. He's protecting America first.
Right.
And that's what's important.
And not warmongering and keeping control of our interests, because what interests... Think about the relative global peace we had. I mean, relative. I mean, obviously no world peace has ever really existed, ever in the history of humanity.
Right.
But we were making strides, and things were... that we weren't worrying about World War III. We were taking care of our needs first, which I think is a good thing. We do it with our own families, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to be good neighbors. We want to be good, members of our town. But it all starts in your home. I can't compromise my wife in favor of me helping out somebody else's wife or someone else's child. Meanwhile, my family goes, without their needs met. And that to me, we were talking about constitutionalists. Isn't that one of maybe the few things that the federal government, especially, is tasked with? Is our common defense? Is our common sense freedoms, our unalienable rights to be protected? Mm-hmm. And they're failing at both. They're failing at both, really. Mm-hmm. So they're not protecting our civil liberties, and they're not protecting our borders and our country in general. They're not looking for our interests first. Mm-hmm. As much as we might empathize and sympathize with the Ukrainian plight and things like that, how can you worry about another country's borders at the expense of ours? Like, we don't worry about our own borders, but we're worried about the sacred borders of a country that has arguably been run by a little mini tyrant himself.
It's just to talk about Ukraine. We are destroying them by giving them money. Okay, Russia's not going to back down.
Yeah.
Okay, there should have been negotiations. I guarantee if Trump was president, he would have had Russia and the Ukraine negotiating.
Yes.
Okay, not giving them money, giving them to kill their people off.
Yeah. On both
You're
sides.
destroying the country. You're wrecking everything.
Yeah.
There's no reason why intelligent people cannot sit down at a table and figure out what's going to work for both.
Yeah. See, my thinking is I think our officials are at the federal level intelligent, but they're on the take, and they are obviously doing things. I hate to say that, we send all this aid over here to this person so that maybe a little bit finds its way back to the people that are pulling the strings from this country, but it sure seems like that would be a logical conclusion to make. As we send billions of dollars that's basically unaccounted for, there's not a good accounting by the money that we're giving to the Ukraine. It's like some of the horrible leaders in some of the African countries will be so generous and will donate money to these other countries that their people need it. They're dying from diarrhea, for crying out loud. We have that cure on our shelves for Pepto-Bismol.
Exactly.
It can cure their problems, but these corrupt leaders aren't allowing their people to thrive and to survive and be better, because when they get the money, it doesn't go down to their people. It's one of those things where you can't continue just throwing our money toward after bad, mm-hmm. and that's what we're dealing with. So Vladimir Putin by no means is a moral, great human being. But to say that because he's so bad, it makes Ukraine's guy good is a faulty presupposition, because in my estimation, they're kind of both in their ways gangsters.
Well, here's the thing. This country, the people who are running stuff, are make Russia, now I'm no friends of Russia, but they're making Russia look like the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Listen, Russia cannot fight us. I don't care what they have. They have the economy of California.
Right.
Okay?
GDP.
They're no global. Our problem is China.
Yes.
And they keep blaming it on the Russians. It's China. You better be afraid of China.
Sure.
Okay? Because they have no morals. They'll kill their own people. They'll come here and kill you. Absolutely. It's that simple. They don't care.
And isn't it crazy how you look at look at the sports world, for instance. If you get athletes, there was this Turkish guy from Turkey, Enes Kanter was his name, and I think he changed his name to Enes Kanter Freedom because he loves America so much. But now he's basically blackballed out of the NBA because he talks about the hypocrisy of NBA players coming out and say it's okay to just bash Trump. And then when the point that, like, you're breaking into a market where it's basically just tyrannical enslavement from a horrible Chinese, but you want to break into that market so no one can say anything bad about China. And sometimes, like we talk about our kids, they're learning politics sometimes from watching these dopey athletes, and that's how they understand the world. So all they're hearing, Russia, Russia bad, but like you said, our real threat economically and probably physically would be from a country like China. It is China. That's the number one. And for all the stuff that we do to our businesses to strap our production, kill our oil, kill our energy sector, China's not doing that. They don't care about their carbon footprint. They want that foothold to be the new power of the world, and they're well on their way. And if you settled the dust right now, maybe you could argue that they are the number one world power, and that's frightening. I would have never imagined this as a kid growing up during the Reagan years, that we would cede our spot in favor of a country like China.
I'm going to tell you something really scary. General Milley on TV 2 days ago said that China's not a problem. He's accepting that they're going to be the world power, and they are.
Oh, wow. That means they are.
Okay, so he is a traitor.
Yeah.
Okay. And John, you're talking about actors and stuff. John Cena. Do you know he said something about China? I watched him on TV apologize to the Chinese government in Chinese.
Oh, my God.
And he had tears in his eyes.
Cringy.
I will never watch a movie he is in
Amen
again.
To that. I'm glad I was never into wrestling since I was a little kid, and none of my kids were. Because, basketball, wrestling, John Cena, these people, they're terrible.
Once these people get a boatload of money, and then they're afraid of losing it.
Yeah.
If you just live the simpler life, you don't have to worship animals to turn around and keep your money. Just live a simpler life.
Yeah.
We talked about that before we came on the radio, about how the old Italians, when the times were good, they would live the same as times were bad, because they held on to their money when they made it. So when things got bad, they didn't have to change their life. Their electricity didn't get shut off. Their cars weren't repoed.
Right.
None of that stuff. But they didn't live above their means. And I can tell you the truth. In the 80s, I lived way above my means, with cars, boats, jewelry, and all kinds of stupid stuff that I don't have any of that now. And I'm probably happier now than I was before.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not chasing that next shiny gold piece or diamond. You know, there's no sense to it. It's not going to get me where I want to be when I'm dead.
Yeah, and like you said, no one can take it with you.
Exactly right.
You're not taking it.
Use your money to do good for your family and help people that can't help themselves. Give them a hand up, not a handout. If you just keep handing people money, you're not making their life any better.
Yeah.
You got to teach them to take the hand up.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
And you do charity work, and I do charity work, and I do charity work for people who want a hand up.
That's true.
Because if it's a handout, that's what the government's for, with welfare.
Yeah. Because when the dust settles and you look back on it and you think, wow, I mean, this person really made, now this person or this group of people are thriving, and that you had a hand in that. There's a lot of pride and a lot of good reason to be proud of how we live our lives without one day regretting. Like, you know, you think of like that Scrooge McDuck cartoon where he's swimming in a money pit, you know, and he's diving through all his gold coins and stuff like that. Because what does all that stuff mean? No one's going to be on their deathbed wishing they had, I wish I had bought Google when it was at $24 a share instead of $35. I'd have my portfolio looking 6% better. That's not what you're going to be thinking about. You're going to be thinking about the same thing that guy who knocked out his 40-hour-a-week job for a wage that was barely enough to feed his family and take him on vacation once every 2 years. That person will have as full of a life, if not better, and looking back on those same things and wanting the same things that the richest man in the world is going to want. More time with your family, more time with your friends, another cup of coffee or whatever it might be. It's not going to be, I wish I had, you know, an extra $10,000 in my IRA to pass along to my spoiled, rotten heirs or something that some of the rich folks have to deal with. Like, I always thought the worst thing in the world, I wouldn't mind winning a little lottery to like take the edge off worrying about money. But if I won $100 million or something, it would just...
Yeah,
that would completely stress me out. I would be
No,
stressed out beyond belief. Probably.
You can find that. If I had a lot of money, what I would do is I would do like an RV park for veterans.
Yeah.
And they could live there for free. Whatever money they get, they could just live there for free, and they could live their life with no stress, no electric bill,
right.
no rent, no nothing. And the reason why you don't build an apartment building is because it could get ruined. But if you do it with RV spots,
that's a good point.
You take the RV away if they ruin it. When that person passes, you get rid of it. You put a new one in there, bring somebody else in. So I would help the veterans because our freedom is because of them.
Yeah. Like, we only have the freedom to have dopey officials right now making terrible decisions off the backs of those people that gave them this platform, that gave them this ability to even make bad decisions. The only reason they're in power now is because of what the greatest generation did, and before them, all the people that fought and bled, and even the ones that maybe didn't fight and bleed but were willing to sign on that dotted line, that volunteered for service or they got drafted, that didn't dodge the draft, people like that. You know, that's what we look forward to. And I'm worried that you see some of our commercials now that are trying to woo people to join the military. I think some of the superpowers out there are looking at our recruitment videos and thinking, these guys they're trying to go at people with this equity and inclusion model and gender whatever stuff going on to appeal to our modern day new soon to be soldiers, and they're probably just like, you know, a dog in one of those old cartoons just with the knife and the fork just looking at the little bird that he wants to attack and mouth watering because we're setting ourselves up, and this isn't the strength and power type model of our military that I remember as a kid. I mean, And even under Trump, like, we weren't just starting skirmishes and getting involved in other people's policing the world, and I think that's, you know, we've lost sight of that, and I think it's a dishonor to those vets to not have a better system, especially when they've done their service, they're aging, getting up there in years, and they're worrying about, like you said, VEA raising our bill by 20%. That can destroy some of these people that are on such a tight margin right now making their bills.
Well, one of the reasons why I was against incorporating the town of Pahrump is most of the people that live here, and I'm saying most of the people that live here, are paycheck to paycheck or one Social Security check away from being out in the street.
Yeah.
If you become a city, everything's going to go up. Your taxes are going to go up, and some people who finally made to pay their house off, if you raise their taxes, they're not going to afford it.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a shame?
That would be a disaster.
Yeah, people losing what they've fought hard for.
I think that a permit to build a house, if you have to build a house and you're close to somebody else, but if you have enough of property and you want to build a lean-to and it's going to fall over, as long as it doesn't fall on the next person's property and damage, do what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, do what you want. When I came here, you know, there's a guy across the street. He has a car club. It's not a business. And they storing boats and cars and everything. It's none of my business.
Yeah.
Okay, when it's dark out, I don't see it. When I drive out of my yard, I don't care.
Yeah.
He's allowed to do that.
Yeah. I think we should adopt some of those policies. Places like Goldfield, like Esmeralda County, doesn't have all these strict...
they have no RPC. Exactly.
Yeah, building type codes on people's land, and they're free, you know, kind of the way that you would think of rural community.
Right. One of the things the town board did when they were in existence was no more single wide homes.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Okay, so now if you have a single wide, you can't even replace it with a newer one. It has to be a bigger house, nothing under 1,000 square feet.
Wow.
Well, why is that? Do they really care how you live? No. They get more taxes if it's not a single wide. So, and they want the community to look like a city. We're not a city. Hopefully, in my lifetime, we will never be. I came from a city. They ruined it.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
When I was a kid in Staten Island, it was farmland. We had a small airport like we have up off of Betty over here. Just like it.
Yeah.
They ruined everything. 25,000 people in the 50s and 60s on an island that's 37 square miles. There's 500,000 people there.
Wow.
Okay, this valley here, you could put all 5 boroughs of New York and half of Nassau County. They got 14 million people there. and they got rivers and bridges and everything. What would this place be if there was 14 million people here? It would be a disaster.
Yeah, it would be. You're right.
That's why I ran away.
Yeah, I think cities have their critical mass, and New York's probably surpassed it years ago. Vegas surpassed it just recently because just driving through there, place I grew up, family, friends out there, I dread it now. How it's become that gigantic metro area.
But compared to New York, Vegas is nice.
Sprawled. Yeah.
Right. Okay, because in New York, the streets were so small because the houses are on 50 by 100 property. Yeah. Then they dropped it down to 90 by 40. Okay, across the street from where I lived when I was a kid, there was a house on 100 by 100. Somebody bought it, knocked it down. They put 6 townhouses on 100 by 100. The garages are so close to the street, they can't even park in the driveway.
Gosh. Yeah, can you imagine? You paying all that money, now, especially now, right? Real estate, and I guess there's conveniences out here. You buy a property, you can park in front of it. You don't have to walk your groceries in. People are having to deal with that now. When
I was 3 years old in 1958, my parents bought this house on Delaware Avenue. They had it built, custom built, $23,000. The house just sold for $870,000.
Wow. Yeah.
Why?
And we were talking about that before real estate, That's
900 square foot house.
Yeah.
Almost $1 million. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Why would you want to live there?
I know. Somebody obviously had
crazy
the motive to be there and almost buy $1 million house there now. That's crazy. But we're coming up on probably the end of the hour here, so I just we're talking about charitable work and things, and I'd be remiss if I didn't drop a reminder that this weekend on Saturday at 9 a.m. and I think on Sunday starting at 8 a.m. at the, right there outside of Patrick Park in the equestrian arena, that there's going to be the Pahrump Junior High and High School Rodeo events. It's free admission, free to get in. There's going to be drawings there. There should be some food vendors. And it's going to be a good time if you can bring your kids, your family out there.
It's actually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It does start.
I'm promoting it on the radio.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the meat and potato events maybe is when I talked to Buddy are really beginning on the weekend days, like on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, if you're out and about tomorrow, stop by. Again, people in Pahrump always talking about things they can do with their children, their families, or go have a good time. This is a good thing to do. It'll be a fun thing to do. It's not going to cost you any money up front. There's going to be other charitable groups there that are helping out, that are going to be serving, I believe, fairly low cost food, but the revenue going from that is also going to the good cause. So, it's a good thing to get involved with. And that's one of the many reasons I enjoy this community, because we can have that here. So it's important to fight for it, to preserve it, to keep it that way.
The new Old West.
Yeah.
They took it off the sign, but I still believe in it. The new Old West.
Yeah. Maybe, maybe next time when they want to squander away some tax money or some grant money, they can consider, preserving some of that. Because, I'm sure if we took a straw poll right now, 2,000 residents, they're not going to want us to become a modern metroplex out here. They're going to want that preserved aspect. So, I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to say to the listeners before we check out of here? I know we didn't break for commercials, so we went a good hour strong here, but
I didn't even think it was an hour already.
Yeah, it just flies. Yeah. This is why me and you can talk outside for a long time and probably look at our watches, and it's like an hour and a half goes by. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good to have you on that side of the microphone for once to be asked about. I know you do a lot of your own interviewing, and it was a pleasure on this side too. So on behalf of the Nevada Patriot Podcast and Anthony Greco, God bless.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.